good deal on where you want to get to. Alice, I don't much care where, Cheshire Cat, then it doesn't much matter which way you go. All of you are probably familiar with that little quote from Alice in Wonderland. And that's something that has stuck in my head ever since I read it as a young kid, because my personal gift is strategy. I was about 48 before I realized that my personal gift was strategy, and I was about to retire from the military. And I had determined at that point in my life that I didn't want to work for anybody ever, 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 ever again. And so I set out on this path to achieve certain things that I wanted to achieve. There were reasons why I didn't want to work for anybody again. Now, when I joined the military, I only joined for 4 years. I planned to get out and make some real money. It's my goal in life. But you heard that I stayed for 27. And I stayed because of leadership and leadership growth, and those opportunities that were there for me to develop those skills. And I didn't like the way leadership was done, so I wanted to figure out how I could do it better. And that's what kept me in there for that amount of time. Now I got about 20 minutes, so instead of having slides and that whole thing, my intent is for you to walk away with two very powerful things in your toolkit that will enable you to turn what you're doing into thousands of dollars. And I'm going to try to leave about a couple minutes for questions after I tell you this story that contains some nuggets of gold that you ought to walk away with. So if you have a pen or paper, get ready, because I'm going to give you two things to write down as we go through this. So let me get started. What I do is strategy development, and I teach or share how you can do strategy development. My gift and talent is strategy. I can't do anything today without knowing how it's going to result in what I want at some point down the line. And I've been thinking strategically all my life. When I was 10 years old, I was thinking about what my life was going to be like when I was 40, 30 years down the line. And that's just how my mind works. But everyone's mind doesn't work that way. So my challenge was, strategy is so key and critical to you being able to manage the most daunting problems in business, that you have to be able to get it done somehow or some way. The biggest problem we face in business is, number one, being overwhelmed. How many of you have ever felt overwhelmed being in your business? Everybody. The second biggest thing is uncertainty. Uncertainty in the decisions that you're making. And I've chosen to work with solopreneurs, micro business owners with 9 employees or less. Why? Because nobody really wants to focus on you for one really important reason. By definition, you have no money. So, how do you build a business helping people who have no money? And I'm gonna say this later, and this is one of the things I want you to write down. You are in business to make money.
Right.
You are in business to make money. I remember being on the stage and hearing a lady say to me, "You're in business to make money." And I sat out there in the audience and I said, "No, I'm not. I'm in business to do a good job. I'm in business to help people. I'm in business to make a difference." And what's the next thing I said? Can anybody tell me what the next thing might have been that I said? The money will take care of itself. But the fact of the matter is, the money doesn't take care of itself.
No.
If you don't have a way of asking and letting people know that you're delivering value and gaining some compensation for the benefit that you're delivering, it's not that they're being malicious or they're trying to steal or take from you. It's just that they figure if you're going to give it for free, then you must be able to do it for free. So I'm jumping way ahead of myself, but this is the message. This is the message. I'm going to deliver the message the way it comes to me. So in terms of strategy development, because the community that we live in these days, the environment we live in these days, moves so rapidly from an information perspective, it's very difficult to get coaching for somebody to tell you what to do, and then you execute that and get the result, because things change too rapidly. Everybody's out there on generative AI, and they're getting this, and they're spinning, and information is moving. So you have to be able to develop strategy on your own. Because I'm gonna tell you this too, there's no right answers. We were all taught there's right answers. In school, if you get 100 on the test, and you get 100 on enough tests, you're gonna graduate #1 in your class. You're gonna be the valedictorian. And everybody's gonna praise you and applaud you, and you're gonna get into the best schools. But in life and in business, those of you who are in business, you know it doesn't work that way, especially those of us who've been in the military, we know it doesn't work that way. We've had to make decisions on 60 to 70% of the information we had available, and take them and make the decision and move forward with it. And then when we see what that outcome is, then we have to make another decision and another decision and another decision. So if I tell you that there are no right answers, there must be some alternative. And the alternative is that there are the best answers for you under the circumstances. I get too many people who come to me and say, well, what am I supposed to do? What is the right answer? There is no right answer. So there's the best answers for you under the circumstances, and when the circumstances change, the best answers change. So strategy is what helps you along that path. So what I'm gonna talk about is the how behind the what. So I say strategy is important, and strategy development is even more important. But how? How do you do that? I'm gonna talk to you about the thinking behind the doing. Because strategy development is all about how you think about what you're doing. Alice wasn't thinking. Alice was in Wonderland. She was wondering where she was going to end up, and in that case, it doesn't matter which direction you go. And too many of us who go into business don't have that directionality that we need. I'll ask people, how much money do you want to make? I want to make as much money as I can. I want to make $1 billion. I want to make $1 million. But it takes work to get there. So what work are you going to do, and how much of it are you going to do in order to achieve your goals? So going back to my story a little bit, when I retired from the military and didn't want to work for anybody ever again, I was given guidance by people. Number one, somebody said, oh, go work for a company, figure out how they do it, and then branch off from there. Well, I didn't know what company to go work for in order to determine what type of business I was going to do so that I could execute that approach. It wasn't going to work for me. I also heard that you're going to succeed through persistence and luck. Now, I was a ball player in college, and I was in the military for 27 years. And if we relied on persistence and luck for success, number one, we never won a game. Number two, we'd be speaking a different language in this country right now if that was what we were going to do. So when people told me that in business, it's persistence and luck, I had a problem with that. And so I went into a franchise business. I bought a franchise territory. I did that for 3 years so I could figure out who I was in business and whether I was going to be able to do this or not. Believe it or not, I'm an introvert. Most of you are going, oh, you must be crazy, you're not an introvert. That's because introverts are introspective. We're in our head until we have everything figured out, and then we'll start talking, and then you can't get us to shut up. So anybody who says I used to be an introvert, but now I'm an extrovert, what has happened is that they are now prepared in a particular space that they feel comfortable in, and now you're hearing it from them. But you take them out of that space and put them in another space, and they're going to go right back to being introspective again and presenting this picture of reserved or quiet or antisocial or any of those kind of things until they get it figured out in their head, and then they'll start talking about that, and you can't get them to shut up. So this was my experiment in going into business and being into business for myself, because I wanted a couple of things. I wanted freedom of time. I wanted freedom of decision making. I wanted freedom of the ability to make as much money as I could based upon my own skills, talents, and abilities, and I was willing to take a bet on myself. Now, what did I know about going into business at that point in time? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. But I wanted that control. So I went to a conference, and I sat in the conference, and a lady was on the stage, and she said, She did a study of 8 billionaires and independently interviewed these billionaires. And each one of them, unbeknownst to the other, she asked the question, what was the foundation and the basic foundation of your success? And she said each one of them said, organized people and organized money. Now I'm kind of new to the game, and I'm sitting out there in the audience, and I go, I don't have people, I don't have money. So how am I ever going to get to be a billionaire? But when I went home and I started thinking about it, I said, yeah, I don't have people and I don't have money, but I have something. What do I have? And I had 2 things that are free. One was time, and then the other was thinking. So if I could use organized time and organized thinking to get organized people and organized money, then we could start to make this train roll down the track. What I realized at that point in time is that when you have resources, strategy is pretty easy. Those of you, again, who are in the military, we do strategy all day, every day. That's what we do. But we have resources, and we pull together, all the division chiefs, all the supervisors, and we get in a room and we talk about how much budget we have, and we talk about how many people, and we talk about all that kind of stuff. Well, as a solopreneur, it's just you. How many of you have employees? Just a couple. And the statistic, and I don't know, they say all statistics are made up on the spot. Well, this is probably one of them. But I did read something that said the majority of small business owners are solopreneurs. They have no employees. And so you're doing it all by yourself. And when I hear, I'm working on my website, I'm working on my social media, I'm doing this and I'm doing this, that's a challenge that we have to deal with, and that's where the overwhelm and uncertainty come in. So there has to be a different way of thinking as we go down this path. And now, this is the second thing I want you to write down, because strategy for a solopreneur has got to be simple. And everything that I present is simple because simple is actionable. When you get too complicated about things, now you just procrastinate. And I know as an introvert, when it gets too overwhelming for me, I just go and take a nap. So, strategy development begins with the definition of strategy, and I want you to write this definition down. Strategy is how, and you have to write it down exactly this way, how to get from where you are to where you want to be. That definition is worth thousands, and I'm going to explain to you why. There's only 3 components here. There's where are you, there's where do you want to be, and then there's connecting the dots. What that definition does is it shifts your way of thinking. You put that in your head, and every time something happens, you can activate that definition. So let's start with where you are. You take account of what you have. How much money do I have? How many people do I have? How many people can I bring on, get to help me? You take account of all those things. How much do I need to learn? Do I have to buy equipment? How much do I have to buy? You take account of all of those things where your starting point is. Now, this is where a lot of small business owners, micro solopreneurs, micro business owners fall down. This is where you fall down, on the where you want to be part. How many of you who are in business, been in business for a while, brand new, thinking about business, know how much money you want to make from January 2027 to December 2027? How much money you want to make? You know. A specific number, okay, for that year. Only a few people raised their hand. Now, if you don't know how much money you want to make, you don't know how much work you have to do. How much of whatever you sell, do you have to sell? At what price? And so you have to have that number. That's just one half of the equation though. Because money, if you just go after the money, at a point in time, it becomes unfulfilling. You have to have some meaningfulness in what you're doing. And whether your meaningfulness comes from, I'm so good at this, I want to do this all day, every day, and if I can get paid to do that, my life is going to be wonderful. My lifestyle is going to be amazing. When I retired from the military, I said, I don't want a work-life balance. I want an integrated lifestyle. I want to be doing things that I enjoy, where my wife and I can travel together, and we've been able to do that. You know, I go out to, where we go, Chicago to speak, and we go out there, and then we take the boat rides. And we go to Vegas to speak, and we go to the Hoover Dam. Integrated lifestyle. But you have to create that, and you have to fight for it, because people are going to try to tell you to do something different. So you're going to have to fight for it. So the work-life balance thing was not fun. But so as we move forward down this path, let me say, let me go this direction. So it comes back to the thinking and the way you're thinking about what you do as you move along this path. So how to get from where you are to where you want to be. When you have the meaningfulness in your business, now if you go after meaningfulness though, and you don't pursue the money or make sure that the money is coming in, then that becomes unsustainable. So you have to be unapologetic about your number. And I don't care if it's a small number or a big number, don't apologize to anyone for what your number is, because you have your reason behind that number. But if you just go after the money, it's unfulfilling. It becomes unfulfilling. If you just go after the meaningfulness, it's unsustainable, because you have to pay for you should be paying for your social media, paying experts to do your website, paying however much it is. And your focus should be on, how am I making the money? And then you take that money to then get other people to work and to do those things on your behalf. So that definition of strategy, now it becomes a matter of connecting the dots. So if you say, I have $0 and I want $200,000 a year or $1 million a year, now you can say, how do I get from 0 to $1 million? I want you to notice one thing. I didn't say time in here, because we can position ourselves for success, but we can't guarantee how long it's going to take us to get there. But if you're continually positioning yourself, then you can accelerate your progression towards that desired outcome. And people can help you, because when they know where it is that you're going, there are going to be some people who are going to come out of the woodwork and say, let me help you. Dr. Keller, Larry Mitchell asked me to come out here today to speak to you. Why did they do that? Because I know where I'm going, and I know what I want to do, and my message is clear, and my message is consistent. So there's no doubt about what I was going to present and how it was going to have an effect on what you all are doing today. So connecting the dots. When you start connecting the dots, it will be an unrealistic construct, because what we have to do is turn unknowns into knowns. You don't know. But when you start saying, okay, this is where I am, this is where I want to be, you have directionality, you start putting, well, I know I need sales, I know I need marketing, I know I need a website, I know I need social media. You just start putting those down as milestones, and now instead of being overwhelmed by trying to go from 0 to $1 million, you just say, let me get to that first step. Let me get that one done. Let me get that. And you might go, now that I did that one, I can get this one done. And then you just shift it to the left. And now you can shift and you can create synergies in what you're doing. And this helps, and it's all in your mind. It's all in your head. It doesn't cost anything. You can be able to develop this strategy on your own to be able to accomplish the things that you want to get done. So, that's the definition of strategy. Now, going back to the last point that I want to make here before I get off, because I had about 20 minutes and I don't know how much time I have left. But
1 minute.
the last piece is you are in business to make money. And I started and I said that a little bit earlier. So I want you to write that one down, and that'll be the second takeaway. So I'm going to stop there, because I could go a lot more, but I wanted to open it up for just a couple of questions, and please let me know how much time I have to go. So, Darryl.
I have one question for you.
Sure.
It's a question, but it's also a statement. How do you deal with people and let them know that how to overcome the obstacles they will run into?
I'm glad you said that because business is a series of overcoming obstacles. And you can't see the next obstacle until you overcome the one that's right in front of you. Okay? I need people, or I need money. So once you get the money, then you'll see, oh, now that I have some money coming in, I need some people to help me with that. Now that I have some people coming in, I need some process, and I need some systems, and I need some program. So each one of those paths are going to each one of those obstacles are going to present themselves to you. So now when you have mapped this out, so you say, this is where I want to, this is where I am, this is where I want to be, and you start putting those markers down, you can now sit down with someone visually and say, this is where we are and this is where we want to be, and we have some challenges here. And I do something that I call milestone mapping, and that's how I help people to see potentially what those obstacles might look like. And then we have what we call above the line and below the line. So we have the big picture things above the line, and then below the line, all the things you have to do to support that. When you start using something similar to that, then you sit down with someone and you describe to them what the path looks like. And that way they'll be able to look at it and go, oh, now I understand. I had a guy that I worked with, and he was merging two companies. And when I showed him the map, when I put him through the milestone mapping process, he used that so that the two companies, and I love whiteboard. I love working on the whiteboard. So all it is a simple line on the chart, and you put that, you start to create that milestone map, and now everybody's looking at it, and they can say, oh, now, did you think about this? Did you think about that? And now it becomes a very in-depth conversation, brainstorming, creativity, and everybody's more on the same page because it is a page that's visual that you can see. So what I call it is the visual representation of strategy. How are you going to get from where you are to where you want to be?
With your strategy development, with your strategy development, I wanted to ask about delegation. People that are going to work with you and it's going to be a part of your vision, are they going to stay with it or will they go off task? How do you navigate through that?
Well, once you do that mission mapping program, you don't have to. And so I'm going to put it this way. For me, what my approach to that has been is choosing the right people. Because I have a certain way of leading, and everybody doesn't respond to my way of leadership. So if I bring somebody in, I'm the type of, because I'm a strategist by nature, which means that I'm working with long-term visions that people can't see. I need people who have this sense of autonomy in terms of how they want to work. They are comfortable with ambiguity. They don't need to know everything before they can make a decision to move forward. In the military, as an officer, I was also an aviator. So in the aviation business, I'm working with other officers. So when I was a flight commander, I was leading other officers. I didn't lead very many enlisted troops when I was in the military. So I didn't give orders, and I didn't take orders. We collaborated. That fit very well with my strategic mindset and my long-term vision. But there are a category of people who are more executors. I could use the term followers, but they're more executors, but they want to be given clear guidance on what they need to do. And sometimes we get it backwards. We'll go to the folks who are executors and they need real clear guidance on what to do. And once they get that guidance, they execute at an incredible level, but without that guidance, they flounder. And we tell those people, you need to be more proactive. You need to be more aggressive. And then we have these people who are leaders. So I say leaders leading followers and leaders leading leaders, which is what I. And these folks just want to know the big picture and the outcome and the end goal. What do you want? Where are we going? And then they want to be able to exercise their creativity to help you get there. And what do we say to those people? You need to stop going rogue. You need to stop getting outside the box. You need to stay within the boundaries of what we're trying to do. So we need to flip that. When you see someone who needs clear guidance, give it to them. And they're going to be more productive for you. When you see somebody who wants to just go and go and go, tell them where we're going. Tell them clearly where we're going and let them help you figure out how to get there. And so hopefully that's helpful. Leaders leading leaders, leaders leading followers. Know who your followers are, give them guidance, know who your leaders are, and then give them the big picture. You can tell who the leaders are because they're gonna call you a micromanager if you keep talking too much. Micromanager. Tony.
Calvin kind of alluded to it when he talked about how many people he's looking at that's competing for what he's trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
What do you look for as a client that says, yes, that's it? Because you can't take every client.
Right.
So what kind of criteria you look for saying, yes, that's a good client?
Because what I do is basic, foundational, there's no bad client from that perspective. And because the definition I use of strategy is how to get from where you are to where you want to be, there's no bad client from that perspective because I don't hold people accountable. I know a lot of coaches do. That's what they do. I hold you accountable when you get an outcome. I don't do that because I say, if your desired outcome is strong and powerful enough, that's your accountability. Either you want it or you don't. But again, I think differently when it comes to that. And I've always thought that way. That's why it goes back to the people I bring in. So the people I bring in, if they ask me too many questions, I get frustrated, I get angry. I don't want to deal with you. You know, so there's the people you bring in. When I interview people for jobs, I wanted to know that they had motivation and there was one of them, but I wanted to make sure they had motivation. And if they didn't have that, then I couldn't bring them in because I wasn't gonna be able to work with them. They weren't asking too many questions. Let me shut up.
So, question, do you use some method like the DISC or, Myers-Briggs? What measure are you using to say they're a motivator or not?
Well, I have a different type of assessment. Mine is called the Business Readiness Assessment, and it's based upon my PhD study. And I didn't mention that part, but in my journey, I came to a point where I felt like I needed to be able to know more and do more in the space of helping micro business owners become purposefully profitable. And all the books I read and all the study I did wasn't getting me there fast enough. So that's what brought me into the PhD program. I already had a couple of master's degrees, so I said, let me go into the PhD program and do rigorous study to understand how to solve this very wicked problem. And after that study, my dissertation, I studied 75 business owners who started with zero, built their companies to $100 million in annual revenue, and I focused on what they did in the pre-profitability stage to position themselves for that kind of success. So out of that work came my business readiness assessment, which is based upon a progression model that I developed, and a revenue strategy development program that is now an app that is powered by Gemini AI, so that I can scale what I do. Because my target goal for me is, I told you, I like big numbers. I cannot lie. So my goal was to help 600,000 micro business owners become purposefully profitable and to generate a personal net worth of $250 million. Those were my goals and objectives. So with this business readiness assessment and the revenue strategy development app, I can now position to be able to do those kind of things. So I don't use, I am an assessment junkie. So I constantly take assessments, the Myers-Briggs, the DISC assessment, StrengthsFinders assessment, which was one of my favorite, just tons of them. I'm always taking personal assessments because I want to know what my strengths are and what I do best.
And strategy is one of my StrengthsFinders.
Yes, StrengthsFinders is one of my favorites. StrengthsFinders actually revealed to me that one of the things that I thought was a risk, that I thought was a weakness. No, not a weakness, but one of the things I thought was bad was my sense of being achievement oriented. I need to be achieving. I love achievement. I love that for whatever reason. And I thought that was a bad thing. Well, StrengthsFinders showed me that it wasn't a bad thing. It was a good thing, and I needed to leverage that in moving down my path towards success. So although I've taken all those different assessments, I don't use them in my business.
I got one last question.
Sure.
From say to someone that is doing great in business, everything is popping, everything is moving, the business gets derailed, say COVID happens, and after COVID, everything just, it's almost like starting up a lawnmower. It keeps pulling and pulling, but it's not starting. What would you say to that person that's starting to say, forget this, or continue?
So everything in business starts out with a problem. And the problem has to be painful, urgent, it has to have consequences, and it has to be emotional. If it doesn't have those four components, nobody's gonna take money out of their pocket and pay you to solve it. So once you see that that problem exists, when people talk about pivot, they're talking, in many cases, they're not talking about pivot. Like I said, I was a basketball player, and when you pivot, you keep your pivot foot, and then you step and you step. And so that pivot foot is the problem. When people say, I pivoted and I went from insurance to IT, they didn't pivot, they traveled.
That's a different, yeah, that's a different.
And that's a violation. So the first thing is, number one, is the problem painful, urgent, does it have consequences, and is it emotional? Do you have a solution for which people are willing and able to pay, and do you care about that solution? So when COVID hits, you're adaptable because you say, oh, I can't meet face to face with people anymore. How else can I help people solve this problem? And now that's what I call pivot. Okay, this was how I was helping them. Now I gotta help them this way. Now I gotta help them this way. And the best thing to do is when you have that problem, don't just have one solution. You can create several solutions, several ways to solve that problem for those people, so that when a COVID hits, you just go to the one that you just go to an alternate.
Can I add to that?
So
Yes, so, one of the things that businesses, kind of get misguided on and derailed with is that they confuse what with how. Right, so when COVID hit, your what did not change. Or your what should not have changed. Your how would have changed, right? So I have a thing that says marry the vision and date the strategy, right? Your strategy is the how-to, right? So does that make, so your what does not, your what should not change. That should be inherent. That is your internal anchor. That is your internal flame. That what should not change. And if your what's changing, then you don't have clarity.
And that's why that definition is so important. It's so important. I said, write it down and memorize it.
Yeah.
The way how to get from where you are to where you want to be. That how is clear. When I started, I said, we're going to talk about the how behind the what. And the what is the painful, urgent problem that you solve and the way in which you solve it. And solution, willing and able to pay. Willing and able to pay means that you don't lower your prices so that people can pay those prices. You make the solution and you increase the value so that they're willing to pay that price. So,
That's good stuff.
All right, one more question.
one more question? All right, Michelle. I'm listening.
For you.
I'm listening.
So I have two businesses that I'm running. The first one took off, I'm happy with that. The other one, I'm getting started. My question to you is, do you think I need a website to go ahead and get my business to where I need it to be? Only reason why is because I'd rather do face-to-face and let people know who they get in business with instead of a website. I like to be personal.
So let me say this real quick before you jump in. That goes back to what I said before, that there are no right answers. There's only the best answers for you under the circumstances. So you have to look at your circumstances and say, who am I dealing with, and does this community of people even look at websites? So it's a little bit of research. I'm gonna throw one last thing very quickly. Basic business fundamentals. In basketball, if you can't dribble, pass, and shoot, you can't play the game. Anybody who knows that, you can't play the game. Can't play the game. Nobody will put you on their team. So part of my study, it was what are the basic business fundamentals for business, and there are three, just like there are in basketball, and those three are selling, cultivating relationships, and research. That research part is where you are to do the research and say, does it make sense for me to do a website to attract the people who are the decision makers, who I want to be able to have as clients, do I need one? And then if you need one, make some money, and then go pay somebody who is an expert in that space to do it for you.
One more question. Ernesto, you came in a little late. You have a question? You know what we're talking about?
I don't. Why you gotta call me out like that? No, I was tied up with a client, so I couldn't get here early. I don't have a question right now.
You have a comment?
Everything that I've heard so far is spot on, so.
Can
About
I
it.
ask,
Sure.
I have a different business besides Magic Microbes.
Yes.
I have 3 partners. Trying to get them all on the same FM page, that's all I wanna say. It's very, very difficult, and we all come from 4 different industries, sorta, but we all have different businesses that we work on for one main goal.
Yeah.
But it's like these guys,
So again, the definition of strategy will help you out there because you don't have to do the milestone map, but you can say, hey, look, this is where we want to be. This is what we want this company to look like in 5 years. And then this is where we are, but this is what we want to look like, and you create that.
yeah.
You create it at the thin air. It doesn't have to be realistic. When I told people what I wanted to do with my business, I had people tell me to my face that's unrealistic. Well, whatever's ever been accomplished in the world, that was realistic. So this is where we want to be, and then you energize everyone to be focused towards getting there, and then you give them the autonomy, especially if you see that they're leaders leading leaders, which it sounds like they are, you give them the autonomy to help you figure it out. I think what General Patton says, don't tell people how to do, tell them what you need them to do, and then let them go. And let them go. So that end goal, that has to be how much money we want to make, and what the meaningfulness is of what we're doing. If you can communicate that to them, that alone will help you solve that problem.
I'll give it up for Dr. Russ.
Great job.
That was free. I see why you were charged. But yeah, that's right. Well, and how do we get more of your information, that app and that other thing you mentioned?
So I have my website, systrosolutions.com, SYSTRO, and then solutions.com. That's my website. So you go there, and then the second place is go to my LinkedIn. My LinkedIn tag is RC Barnes. RC Barnes. So www.linkedin.com/in/RC Barnes. And there's a few Russ Barneses out there, but I'm the only one who has current or PhD on my LinkedIn profile. So go take a look at that. My website has a plethora of information. What was that?
BARNES.
BARNES. It's a plethora of information. But connect with me on LinkedIn, and then we can continue some of this conversation.
Now, that's a strategy.
That's a strategy.
I heard it.
Really?
Strategists know strategy.
Is that right? Okay, good question. So, on behalf of the, on behalf of what different hats, I'm over here in Central Florida, would like to make he a member, honorary member of Central Florida Business Diversity Council if needed. So, fill out the form, and that's our pay for your service as honorary member. Says it up over there. Okay. So thank you guys. Next month, Lord's willing, we're going to have the City of Lakeland Economic Department discuss how to